Hello, everyone. On this episode of Positive Takes, I wanted to talk about Jordan Peele's third motion picture that he wrote, produced, and directed called Nope. This is his first science fiction foray, and he made a film here that clearly wants to say a lot about the visual medium, about perception, about wild animals and dealing with wild animals. And let me just say, as always, spoilers throughout. Um, this is a film that you don't realize, how it's been teeing you up and queuing you up throughout until you've seen it all. And that by that time, definitely rewards a rewatch. And I would say that, all his films obviously have similar thematics and similar influences, and he very much wears those influences on his sleeve. In this case, we have a film that's almost a counterpoint to Get Out. And I've certainly enjoyed all three of his films. Whereas Get Out is definitely about black fear, I would say this movie is more about black pride, and you get that very much from the beginning, where we have this family that's has a very unique lineage and connection to the medium of film. We have this test footage, which is actually real, that they've written into the script. Of the first footage ever taken in the U.S. of a black man riding a horse, a cowboy, since there were a lot of cowboys who were of color. And this is also a film that's about loss and depression, and some people might be a little turned off by. I'd call this sort of a four-hander, but Daniel Kaluuya is definitely one of the predominant characters in the movie, and he's playing a very introverted, but also dealing with a depressed incident, the death of his father, the patriarch of the family and the head of this studio. So this is a character who's very much inward, who is, kind of shunning opportunities right and left, maybe doesn't really believe in his mission anymore, basically just wants to take care of his horses and try to, eke by a living as however he can. But by the end, we see these characters really rise to the occasion. I think Keke Palmer is definitely one of the standouts of this film. Somebody who has a lot of charm and a lot of, extroverted energy. She very much reminds me of like an excitable kid in a way. She has that sort of energy. And I also really liked the character of Angel, played, I think, by a relative newcomer. This is a character who, doesn't necessarily have to be involved. He's somewhat of a conspiracy theorist who does explain some really interesting theories about UFOs and UAPs, as he brings up that they're now called. I think this film was definitely written in the wake of the Navy reveals of all this footage of real whatever they are, real ships, real test flights, perhaps, who knows what they are, but we clearly have pretty strong evidence that there's something going on that we're not aware of. So this film very much comes out of that, and also, a very creepy rendition of the flying purple people eater that comes in fairly late in the film. That might also have been an influence. And I will say that I wasn't quite sure what to make of this film when it first started. It very much drops you in. You're not supposed to know what's going on. Again, you get that M. Night Shyamalan influence, and again, very much also Steven Spielberg, particularly Jaws, which you realize this movie is very much modeled after. So it also has this sort of feel of Inside Baseball, where a lot of the movie itself seems to be about filmmaking itself. The entire second and third acts are about trying to capture footage of this flying object, to sell it, to try to get famous, and maybe to try to alert people to a possible danger that exists out there. Casting is great throughout. We do definitely get sort of a bait and switch with Steven Yeun, who was all over the marketing, publicity, and the interview circuits. Definitely set up as going to be throughout the film. It's very much Janet Leigh in Psycho playing Marion sort of character, who you get more through flashbacks, through a very funny setup and disturbing setup. And I think throughout the tone is very much mixing, humor, surreality with, extreme danger and horror elements. And that's true from the very start, where you have the start of this premise. You don't know exactly what's going on, but you see that chimpanzee has been, attacking people, and you don't even know who you're seeing. And this happens twice in the film, where you're seeing from a character's point of view, and you don't see what they do in response until later in the film. Later it happens with Kiki Palmer's character, where you see with OJ, she has this little communication, the eyes thing with him, but you don't see her response, which is like that, until the very end of the film when they do sort of a callback. Another very funny detail is the fact that, the last major motion picture they had been helping with was The Scorpion King, which is kind of a random, funny aside. Um, so you get very much from the start that OJ, he isn't being treated very well by the film industry, um, his little part of it. And you also see in this monster, whatever it is, it's very much something that's based on vision, based on this predator prey sort of relationship. And you see that that could definitely be a metaphor for something, possibly something related to Hollywood, how people consume media, how people take in imagery, and kind of chew people up and spit them out through this industry that often is very exploitative, particularly I imagine to people of color. So these are elements that are definitely in the mix. I'm not entirely sure what it all means, but clearly this is something that was on Jordan's mind when he was writing and conceiving of this project. Um, Definitely the visuals throughout are very strong. I think they filmed day for night. I think it's pretty widely known. And in this case, it really works very well because you can actually see what's going on, to state the obvious. And with the visuals, the way they're being arranged, a lot of it is outdoors, a lot of it is at night until the very end. It's very much the Jaws thing again of giving glimpses of what this thing is, and even when you think you have a handle on it, you think it maybe is almost like a sombrero shape, a hat shape. You learn at the end that that's actually just the tip of the iceberg, and there's much more to it than that. Um, I think this is also a very deliberately paced film. It almost starts sort of painfully slow in Inside Baseball, as I said, where you're kind of like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be latching onto and what the impetus for the film is. But, you very much get that family bonding time between the two siblings. Again, they're clearly grieving the loss of their father, who left a very big hole in their hearts. You even get to this nice little detail, which is that Kiki's character, has clearly memorized. I think her character's named Emerald. She's clearly memorized the speech that her father gave about the studio, the Haywood studio, to the point where OJ actually has to interject another great into her speech about great 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 grandfather. So it's very clear that they're both trying to fill the space of their father and kind of failing at that a bit, or struggling with it. We get the character of Angel, who's very funny, very likable. Again, a very engaging presence. I personally have not seen this actor in anything else, but hopefully they do a lot more stuff with Jordan or wherever. I think they could probably be a really good TV actor. Maybe they are already. I didn't really look that up. But yeah, they add a lot of humor to this plot. Another person to bounce ideas off of, and somebody who again is very much motivated by their own sort of self-interest in it. We also get a character who's played by an actor who played the villain in The Crow, a very like 80s actor who's playing a very eccentric cinematographer. Again, the cinematography throughout is very strong, a very clear focus on eyes and on what the visual acuity, what visual perception means between animals, between objects. We also have a strong emphasis on sound design, as this creature seems to draw away energy, so we get lots of licensed music that sort of fades in and out creepily. And even when Steven's character is killed, about midway through the movie, we get little, ghostly reminders of him through audio recordings that he's made for his, Western-themed horse stunt village, or I should say horse and alien-themed. And one aspect that didn't quite thrill me was the orchestral music, and I don't like to just dump on people, but in this case, I think that, I think that they were going for a very specific thing, and unfortunately for me, that specific thing didn't really, resonate in any way. Um, so that's not, a criticism on the composer themselves or the orchestra, because again, I think they were going for a very specific thing, and I think Jordan has a very clear handle on what his particular mode is, what he's trying to reference or draw from. We get more references throughout. Um, Particularly one reference to Akira, which was almost made me want to stand up in the theater if it hadn't been if I hadn't been like only one of the only ones at the time I went. Um, this awesome visual callback to the scene of I think Kaneda sliding his motorcycle across the sand as recreated in this film. And that was an awesome moment, particularly knowing that Jordan Peele himself was approached to direct Akira and is a fan, obviously. Um, some other things that I should mention is, I feel like Jordan's style isn't necessarily for everyone. It is very casual about the drug use, which I think is also applaudable. It's not really a plot point. Emerald's character just smokes throughout, as does Angel, and probably OJ, though we don't really see that. And another thing is there are really specific, sounds to the dialogue, little asides, little moments that are feel artificial in a way, and they're very stylistic. It makes me think of Us as well, but don't quite feel, necessarily authentic. So it's again that very determined stylistic choice where it's gonna work for a lot of people and might not work for some people who, again, it might like not resonate well with them. Um, yeah, so again, like I was saying, I think this film is very deliberately paced. It starts very slow. It starts to pick up. There's little horror jolts throughout. This will make you a little freaked out by horses, or at least it freaked me out a little bit. They are just very strong animals, very like loud animals. So obviously there's a lot of love for horses in the film and the connection to the cowboy. But it is also scary when they're shrieking and running around and like being pretty wild. As someone who didn't really grow up in the country necessarily. So that was another strong element. And essentially, we have a few different set pieces that this builds up to. It's again a slow build. There's lots of humorous moments, particularly one moment when OJ thinks that aliens, classic aliens, are attacking him, and he actually punches one in the face, only to find out that it's actually the kids of Stephen Ewan's character. So that was very funny. They're trying to get them back for some horse deal that didn't quite go the way that they wanted. Um, so yeah, I think this is a very clear film, clear focus, clear visuals. I think Jordan definitely knows what he's going for and goes after it, just like he did for Us. Maybe a little too much in that film, although I did quite enjoy it. I think it's underrated still. And obviously Get Out resonated for very strong moments and visuals, almost like a comic book sensibility in some ways, which I guess I shouldn't assume, but Jordan Peele is probably a fan. So yeah, I don't really have anything but praise for this film, some of those few knocks aside. I do also think, we have this cutaway to the flashback of what happened in this little sitcom about Gordy the chimp, where, obviously somebody didn't realize that loud sounds of balloons would set him off and get him, like, attacking everybody. And we have the disturbing, attack of his co-star, this girl, who then we later see horribly scarred up, which is kind of a scary moment, just like scary pity sort of thing, where you're like, oh, poor girl. Um, but this is, a very resonant flashback where you don't not quite sure where it's going, but you realize, obviously, by the time that you see that this isn't a ship, but is actually some sort of living entity, that it's very much the metaphor of the chimp, of trying to engage with a violent predator that's trying to kill you and eat you. And that's a very primal fear that I think Jordan's tapping into there, and a very clever interpretation of the UFO mythos. Although Angel does mention that maybe this is a trope that's pretty common. This is the first time I've seen it personally, but I'm sure it comes up all the time in sci-fi and novels and short stories. So we do get, this build up. We get sort of an implication that Steven's character might have actually known of this alien before. This might have happened before, and he might have tried to pacify it, or I'm not sure if he probably isn't actually feeding it, but somehow he has this connection that's drawn from the chimp that he wants to, I guess, avoid danger to himself. Very humorous reference, very funny references at the beginning as well. We get some references to Mad Magazine and SNL of how this Gordy incident, which left him heavily traumatized, was spun out in the media. And we do get, a character who is from TMZ trying to investigate as well. Um, so again, we have these little resonances that I guess are very meaningful if you are perhaps involved in Hollywood. That for a layperson maybe doesn't really mean much. So I'm not really sure exactly what it builds up to, other than again just like exploitation and trying to film everybody's personal tragedies, or just try to make fodder for the media. So again, I think this is definitely a Jordan Peele who has been, in very heavily involved in Hollywood for years now. From Key and Peele on beyond, or his days on Mad TV even, coming up through the comedy ranks. So this is somebody who has been deeply involved at many levels in Hollywood, who is now reflecting on that and maybe has some negatives to say about his perception of what Hollywood does. Uh, his movies are always full of really fascinating themes that you can really dig into. One thing I will say is I think they make their best impression right off the bat. Whether it's Get Out or Us or this one, Nope, where I think it's most impactful seeing it the first time, and it might have some diminishing returns. And I don't think every movie necessarily has to be made to replay over and over again. I think this is one that should have been seen in the theaters. Obviously, that might have been dangerous for some, for most. But yeah, I think it makes a very strong first impression, and I think it really also plays well on replay. I'm not sure if I would see it like a ton more times. I haven't seen Get Out. I think I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times. Same with Us. So I think this is very much the case, with like most horror movies, where it's very much the anticipation and the tension building, and the not knowing what's quite going to come next. Um, and again, once you actually get the full reveal, and we get Keke Palmer embracing, this hero role, having everyone else get sort of taken out. Holt gets taken out very much in a similar way to Quint in Jaws, going out, trying to be a hero, or trying to capture the impossible is his whole thing. And we get Angel gets taken out of the picture but not killed, thankfully, since it's a very nice character. Um, and we're not quite sure what happens to OJ, though we see him at the end. So somehow he got rescued essentially through Keke Palmer's actions. So these are very nicely paced action sequences essentially, where you do feel really drawn in, and it builds to like this great action moment where she actually figures out how to take out this UAP and also capture photos of it, proof like they were trying to get all along. Um, so again, this is very much commenting on many modern things going on in the world today, to do with the media and consumerism and perception. So I think you also bring a lot to it, whoever you are watching this movie. So I think that's part of it as well, part of the spell of filmmaking that I think Jordan's trying to tap into as well, leaving things sort of open-ended so you can read into it almost whatever you want, or, get academic about it, as I'm sure many people did with Get Out in particular. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Jordan does next, what genre he decides to sort of tackle next. This one being almost like his Spielberg Alien movie in a way. Yeah, whatever he does next, I'm sure is going to be also excellent and full of interesting characters and memorable dialogue, and that mix of tones, and really memorable music as well. In terms of the licensed music, again, I had problems with the orchestrated aspects. Um, so yeah, I definitely recommend seeing this movie in as big a screen as you can. Maybe it plays in theaters again, second run. So yeah, I think this movie will definitely stand the test of time, be well considered alongside Jaws. The alien design is very memorable and visually beautiful once you finally get a look at it, and how it works, almost like orchid-like, the opening and closing of it. So yeah, definitely go check this out. And definitely stick with it past the slow moments, and I think it'll be a very rewarding experience.